Hi there. It's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight to the launch of Jonathan Ancer's book, Betrayal. Thank you, Mervyn and the team, for having us here. It's always great to be at the book lounge. They're great supporters of the local industry and local authors, so it's one of our very, very favourite places to be. Sorry, is that better? Okay. My name's Jill Moody. I'm from Tafelberg, the publisher of Jonathan's book. When we get to this point, we're always very, very proud and very happy because it takes a long time. I think in our case, about more than 2 years. And it takes a lot of toing and froing and discussion and thought and coffee. And in the end, you come out with a book, which you hope says something true about this world. You hope that it sparks debate and conversation and new ideas. And in your book, what I found most fascinating when we were working on it is that it really gets under the skin of why we make choices and the consequences of those choices. And it's with spies, what's so interesting with them is that they don't engage in open warfare. They have to sidle up to someone, they have to win their trust and maintain their trust. And then when they are unmasked, the sense of betrayal is enormous. Relationships are broken. I think both parties are actually emotionally disfigured. So this is a great psychological terrain for a good writer to get his teeth into, and Jonathan is a very good writer. Long before he became an author, he was known as a specialist in narrative journalism. I actually went to a conference years ago on narrative journalism, and Jonathan was the speaker. He is, speaking of being an author, he is also the author of Craig Williamson, which came out quite a few years ago. It's still in print, it's still being read, and I'm sure it's on the shelves here if you have a look for it. With us is Tom Eaton. He is a well-regarded author in his own right. I don't think he regards himself as a journalist, but to my mind, he is the top political satirist and commentator in this country. And if you don't read his columns on Business Day and in time selected a week, then you really are missing out. So thank you, Tom, for being here. We really appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to give this to you.
Thanks very much. Hello, welcome everybody. Is this loud enough? Too loud? Not loud enough? All fine. Okay. Well, apologies to everyone in that side of the room. You're going to be looking at our shoulders tonight, but we'll do our best to include you. At first glance, this remarkable book seems to be a book about events from a rapidly dimming past. The Cold War, even the 1970s, are almost half a century away now. Many of the spies Jonathan writes about are elderly. Some characters in this book have passed on. That time span struck me as the same as a book written at the start of the space race that deals with the Victorian era, roughly 50 years. And yet the mark left on this country by espionage remains an incredibly raw and current one. We saw it recently in the national news when Jacob Zuma wanted to create another diversion. He could have accused Derek Hanekom of being corrupt. He could have accused him of being a sellout. He could have accused him of being an agent of white monopoly capital. But he said Derek Hanekom was a spy because that word was the motherlode. That was the word that carried all that baggage and that incredible emotional payload. Just 10 days ago, the Cape Times ran a front page story, you may have seen it, revealing that Westwood High School was employing a former apartheid spy to teach history there. I say revealing because, of course, it's in this book. I don't think the Cape Times got around to reading it. But the angle of the report was very clear. It was shocking that a spy should be having contact with school children. It was wrong, it was reprehensible. Even now, that sense of betrayal runs so deep. And in this book, you will discover why. Which brings me to the writer of this most excellent account. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Ancer.
Sorry, this is rubbish, I'm leaving.
His cover's glowing. Jonathan, congratulations, well done. It's all downhill from here. I just hope there's no polonium in the wine. For starters, tell us, how did we get here? Jill mentioned Craig Williamson, but why spies?
When I started on Craig Williamson, it wasn't because he was a spy that I was interested in him, but it was because who he was, and it felt to me that he had disappeared, he had just vanished from our public knowledge. He was there living his life, and only when he was talking about him, he was just living a life free of consequences. And after I published the book, Jill and I met, and we talked about other projects, and I had this image in my mind when I met with Craig Williamson, and I watched him walk away into the sunset, and I had wondered what had happened to the other apartheid spies, and so I went on a quest to try and track some of them down, and that's why we're here.
Which brings me nicely to my second question, which is the practicalities of writing this book. You say you went and tracked them down. Now, to people like us, I think the idea of tracking down a spy seems either foolish or impossible. So tell us about the practicalities. Firstly, how do you find a spy? Somebody who's trained not to be not found.
Well, actually, one of the first people I went in search of was a woman called Jenny Miles. And to look for somebody on Google who has the surname of a measurement is just almost impossible. Try to search for Jenny Miles and you just won't find her. But I use a lot of social media to track them down. And when I met very briefly with Dieter Gerhardt, and he was a spy, and he lives in Donderdag, and he said to me, a lot of the information about him is in the public domain. Just go and do what I did, be a spy and practice information. And so that's what I did, is that I stalked some of them, and I was able to find them on social media. They're all on social media, and harass them.
And I'm sure, I'm fascinated to know, you and I both interviewed lots of people, and it's usually kind of, you've squeezed in 5 minutes with them with a dictaphone and they don't want to talk to you. But when we think about interviewing spies, there's this idea of a sort of starkly lit safe house with one of those reel-to-reel tape recorders. I found your account of meeting Dieter Gerhardt almost comical, because you were sort of meeting at a fun restaurant in Donderdag. The meetings that you did have, what were they like?
So the one that really sticks out is with Joy Harnden, and we met over a series of a year, quite often, and it took a long time to gain her trust. And at every single meeting, she would just sob. And in the end, I felt quite sorry for her. I had a lot of sympathy for her. She's really, it's 30 years later, and she betrayed a whole lot of people. And I think she's really grappling with it. The other spies were really not interested in taking responsibility. So Craig Williamson still refuses to take any responsibility. We had a very weird encounter at a guest house in Pretoria, where there were all these, it was a hunter's guest house, and all these dead animals in this massive room on the walls. And I was sitting there and just watching all these eyes looking back at me. It was quite unnerving. And Lord Banks was, also really doesn't feel like he did anything wrong. He was, I didn't know it at the time, but he was a Craig Williamson people here. I was wondering if he would turn up. I don't think he's here.
Actually, should I just ask, are there any spies present? Just vote for him. That is why.
Sorry, we can only hear you, Tom, not
Okay. Right into it. Okay, that's better. Nice ring. I've done that. Yeah.
Also, can we have the fans on? Here we go. Hurrah. So as I was reading this book and getting sucked in, as it were, a question occurred to me. You write throughout it about who can you believe, who can you not believe. Once you had done all these interviews, and you had all these hours of material and the whole book's worth. How did you decide what was true? Because it struck me that every one of these people could have been telling you whatever they thought you wanted to hear.
Yeah. So a lot of the people that I interviewed had been betrayed by the spies. Some of them are here now, and they told me their story. So I think it's not only a story about spies, but it's a story about who the spies betrayed. And I think what I tried to do is sort of show both sides, or an account, but really focusing on the people who had been betrayed. And I believed that their version, especially interviewing more than one person, and also it wasn't only the spies who I interviewed. I went through court documents and newspapers, and I was able to verify quite a lot of the information. Hopefully, it's more or less all true, but I think so people like Craig Williamson, he sticks to his script. He's not going to change his story. His story stays the same. He's very consistent, and it's quite easy to look at his timeline. So in that chapter, I wasn't necessarily telling the story of him as a spy from his perspective, but from the perspective of the people who were betrayed by him.
The book features mostly spies, if I can generalize enormously, who are, to use an example from fiction, like George Smiley from Le Carre, rather than James Bond.
Yes.
There are very few exploding speedboats and running on crocodiles in this book. With the exception of Craig Williamson, these are not people who would kill anyone or even want anyone killed. So perhaps this is a self-selecting list I'm talking about, but these are people who would talk to rather than murder a writer such as yourself. I'm interested to know, are there dangerous spies who are still out there? And if there are, did you ever have any sense of danger writing this book?
I didn't have any sense of danger. I think the people that I write about are no longer in position to be dangerous. I mean, even Craig Williamson, who's still involved in smuggling tobacco, and he's still got his networks, his illegal networks, and he's not really a threat to me. He wasn't very pleased with the book that I wrote about him, and so our meeting at this guest house was quite uncomfortable. But I didn't feel that my life was in danger. I think there are a couple of people that I think are dangerous, not necessarily spies, but the spy handlers and people in the Eastern Cape in that security branch. That was terribly repressive and they were quite brutal. I think they're still running around, and a lot of those people have gone into security, and I think they're still very dangerous. But I never felt threatened.
We won't mention those names. Plausible deniability. To read this book is to meet various characters, various people who are not defined necessarily by patriotic zeal or very obviously sort of sociopathic tendencies. Many of these chapters, there's a lot of doubt, nuance, ambivalence. Some of the spies don't even seem sure how or why they became spies. In your experience of meeting these people and talking about them with people who knew them, how much was a decision and how much was people drifting in a certain direction? Or is the vagueness a form of denial to distance themselves from what happened?
Yeah, I think it's a form of denial. I think without exception, they all, well, maybe Craig Williamson, or even Craig Williamson, they all said that their contribution to the harm of other people was minimal. They were just providing information. Gordon Brookbank said he was just providing information so that the state could plan better. Olivia Forsyth said, well, she was just giving information, but she never ever put her friends in harm's way. But they were giving a lot of information, and that information was being analyzed and forming a very big picture, and the state was taking kind of note of putting all the threads together, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, and then forming their decisions to arrest people, detain people, assassinate people based on the information that these spies were providing.
So, I mean, obviously there's a strong sense of self-preservation in all of these people. They're trained to hide. But it's interesting to me that there's still this I suppose it's a tacit acknowledgement of guilt, that they are still saying, no, it's complicated.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it is complicated, and I think they do see that. But I still think they try to minimize their role. I don't know if it's easier to live with. I'm sure it is, but they do not want to be seen as playing a role in dirty politics. But that is what they did.
I suppose that leads on to my next question, which is, James Bond and fictitious spies like Bond and Jason Bourne and whatnot have taught us that people spy for country, for sort of pre-war nationalistic reasons, or for an agency to which they're very loyal. But, for example, Peter Gerhardt you suggested, seemed to be largely in it for the money. The money was the factor. Is there a sense from the people that you've met and talked to that money was a sort of dirty word, that there's a sort of amateur pride in what they're doing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, with Dieter Gerhardt, I was very, very interested in his motive. And there is this acronym, MICE, to try and explain spies' motives: money, ideology, coercion, ego, or excitement. And I spoke to somebody who said, with Dieter, first of all, people said it was money. He claims absolutely it was ideology. And he came up with this quite scientific formula to try and explain his motive. And I think with Dieter, it was a combination of many reasons why he became a spy. He's a very intriguing character, fascinating, and I think he's lived a remarkable life. But I think there is that sense of pride, and also I think there's a sense of being powerful. Spies, like even the ones who that didn't realize how they became spies, they were seduced by the power of being spies, of the ability to manipulate and to play a role in the direction of the country.
Although that does remind me of one of them, and unfortunately I forget which it was, but you talked about one of the spies who, I think in fact it may have been Robert Whitecross, possibly, I'm not sure, but one of them who suddenly just turned, just had enough. And the theory was that, he didn't stop being a spy, but he no longer bothered trying to be particularly helpful to people he was working against. And the theory was he'd been essentially recalled by that point. So he just gave up.
Yes, yeah.
He couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
What was the phrase used? D-mob crazy or something like that.
Yeah.
So once he'd done what he thought was his job, he was out.
In fact, he was this spy who had infiltrated Karl Niehaus and Jansi Lawrence's commune. And they had already decided that they were going to arrest them, and it was a matter of time. And he brought his girlfriend to kind of show her what he was doing at work. This was my day job. And
it's a genuinely creepy passage in this book, because he's been this kind of fake strugglista, and then one day he just can't be bothered to be a fake strugglista and shows up with his girlfriend, who's very unlike all the other strugglestas, and they're just looking at the people they're about to arrest. It's very creepy. So when I was at UCT, there were rumors that the brightest and the best in the sort of humanities classes were being recruited by British intelligence, by MI, whatever it was at the time. I didn't want to be a spy, but I really did want someone to tell me that I was the brightest and the best. So I was very disappointed that I never got the call. In this book, universities seem to be extremely fertile grounds for recruitment. Every second one of these spies started their campaigns at the university. Is there something, or was there something specific in university culture, in student life, that enabled or even encouraged this kind of thing?
I think students were firstly quite impressionable, and were easily flattered and manipulated. And I think also there was the financial incentive, and that was with Mark there. He was quite seduced, I think, by the power, but I also think that for him it started off because of money. And I think a lot of those people who started informing, it was quite an easy thing. We'll be in control of it. We'll be able to manipulate what's the people who are trying to manipulate us. And I think it really was an easy pickings of the security branch. And also, the whole strategy was we'll infiltrate, especially Rhodes University. It's a small group of lefties, and we'll get our spy inside there, and it's a very good springboard into bigger organizations. And I think that's what their strategy was. But I think definitely that students were quite impressionable, and they were flattered. They were, you are the brightest, you're the best, and you're playing a role in kind of safeguarding our democracy from the communists.
Yeah, there's a very, very sort of touching, kind of grimly touching moment that we touch on here, where one of the students co-opted by a spy is told that her reports are going directly to, is it Oliver Tambo?
Yes, yeah.
She's told to, write everything you know, because these reports are going directly to Oliver Tambo, whereas in fact they were going directly to the special branch.
Yes, yeah.
That's awful. Come across as quite vain about their achievement. There's into three categories. The sort of, I don't know, I only work here category, and the only a long time ago, let's not talk about a category, and then we were hot stuff. The main ones seem to be still quite proud of what they did. How, in your opinion, how successful was the apartheid spy network, spy system?
I think it was hugely successful. I think they infiltrated, just about everything. They were at some point, Gordon Brookbanks told me that there were 5,000 people operating for the special branch. Even people who didn't realize they were passing on information to the state, they'd set up what they called false flags. So sort of companies or groups or institutions or think tanks that people were passing on information to, but it was actually going to the state. And I think they had a very good idea of who in the left movement was we want, and I think that they were hugely successful in infiltrating the left.
The one, another passage that really struck me was where you describe how that Scandinavian donor group, their money was channeled directly to buying a farm for the
Daisy Farm.
That was the spy network. And in fact, visitors from Scandinavia were hosted at the farm, thinking that it was a sort of ANC training site, but actually it was a sort of nest of spies.
Yeah.
That takes quite some doing.
I mean, that's good stuff.
I want to talk to you about the implied end of a lot of these chapters, which is rehabilitation, which is reincorporation into society. I was fascinated to read, in this book gives me the first explanation I've ever come across as to why more spies aren't tried and jailed, and that is simply national embarrassment.
Yes, yeah. I also was quite shocked by that.
Yeah, because I think we all have a sense of, as soon as the spies unearthed, they must be publicly shamed. But of course, neither country wants that to come out, and so a lot of them are just, as you said, put out to pasture. A few now have careers in semi-respectable professions or legally shameful ones like finance. There remain strong differences of opinion about whether spies should be allowed to live out their lives or removed from society. What is your view on, or is it a case-by-case issue?
I think it probably should be a case-by-case issue. I think there was a missed opportunity for the Truth Commission to, they decided not to call spies to give evidence and tell the truth. And I think that really was a pity, because I think they played a big role in this country. And I think we're seeing the consequences and repercussions now with people like Jacob Zuma saying Derek Honeycomb was an enemy agent and Siphiwe Nyanda was, it's an impossible accusation to answer. And I think it was a missed opportunity. I think sort of speaking to somebody like Joy Harnden, who really, I felt a lot of sympathy for, and I think she really should come and tell her side of the story, and she should ask for forgiveness, or maybe I say that people shouldn't ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that should be given, not asked for. But I think people should come forward and tell us what they did and what they were responsible for. And so I think it is a case-by-case basis. I think people like Olivia Forsyth, who continue to lie quite clearly, shouldn't be forgiven. I think Craig Williamson shouldn't be forgiven. But maybe Joy Harnden should.
In the second imprint of this, you can give little ticks of trust. So those are all the questions I have about this kind of book, but I'm very interested to know, based on this, what comes next? Because surely in putting this book together, all kinds of avenues of communication have opened up. Are there people who now want to talk to you? Are there people who now refuse to talk to you? What happens now?
Yeah, I'd be quite curious to see how the spies will respond. I did get a message from Theatre Gearhart, who was very happy.
Oh, he was?
He was, yeah. I've had an encounter with Roland Hunter, who's not an apartheid spy, he was a sort of an ANC spy who found himself as a conscript in military intelligence. He's a different kind of creature to the other spies. I had actually been contacted by somebody who was also in the Navy, who spied for some American agency. I don't know if it was the FBI or the CIA, but he came and we met for coffee and told me sort of how he landed up being a spy. So I do think that there are many more spies that have yet to be unearthed.
I suspect you may become a sort of debriefing
I think so.
KGB and CIA knocking on the answer.
Yeah, I think I must find a different project there. I'm kind of sick of them.
What are you? That's interesting.
I am, yeah.
Did you reach a point of saturation?
Yeah, spy saturation.
So I suppose my final question is, coming back to your title, Betrayal. What struck me most was that when we think about spies, there's the betrayal of country. That's the narrative of most spy fiction. But what comes through again and again is that the sting of betrayal is personal, that it's individual, betrayed by individual. And perhaps that's what makes it so complex, because it's not these easy binaries of good and bad. It's complicated human relations.
Yeah. And especially, I keep on harping on the Joy Harnden, but maybe it was because she really touched me. But there was a friend of hers, Anne McKay, who they'd become really close, and Anne went off. The house had been petrol bombed, and Joy had come after the petrol bomb to check that everything was all right, and that was she was probably responsible for it, or for letting them know. And Anne, it's also 30 years later, and she sort of also sobbed she felt so betrayed by what Joy had done. This was a friend of hers. And the scars of betrayal don't heal very easily. Decades later, she has trust issues. She said, if she doesn't know who your parents are, she is not going to trust you. She needs to know everything about you, and it's quite profound trust issues that the bonds of trust are hugely important.
And in this book, there's so much. What interested me was how little paranoia there was among specifically groups on the left being infiltrated. That trust seemed to have been quite easily given by many people.
Yeah.
Obviously there are a few holdouts who said, "I asked and I'll rap with that one."
Yeah.
But
literally a rap.
Yeah.